Hey.
Alright, so I've been meaning to make this video for quite some time now, pretty much ever since the Pistons ended up getting the #1 pick in the most recent draft lottery. But anyway, finally getting it done, and I'm here to say that the Pistons have finally earned the attention of the NBA fans yet again. It's been quite a long time since we've had a good Detroit Pistons team in the league. Obviously, in '89 and '90, we had them go back-to-back with Isaiah Thomas leading the team to 2 championships. Then, in the early 2000s, they had 6 consecutive seasons where they made it to at least the Eastern Conference Finals, including 2 finals trips and 1 championship, where they were sporting one of the best defenses the NBA has ever seen. But since 2009, not only have the Pistons only made the playoffs on 3 separate occasions, which were all first-round exits, but they've only had 1 season above 500 in that same time span. Even heading into last season and early on into last season, the Pistons were still looking like one of the worst franchises in the entire NBA. They made a lot of, at the time, questionable signings. First off, they signed Jeremy Grant, who had been a career role player, to a 3-year, $60 million deal that a lot of people thought was just really expensive for, again, someone who was a career role player and had at best been a 3rd option on previous teams. Pistons also went out and signed like 10 million centers for some reason with Jahlil Okafor, Plumlee. They got Tony Bradley from, I think it was the Sixers at that time, traded away a few other, I don't know, it was a center mess. Not to mention, they also still had Blake Griffin and Derrick Rose on the team, some relics from the past who were good players in their own rights, although, BG didn't have the best time in Detroit, but again, still 2 really good players who were just taking up a lot of minutes on a team that was going nowhere. But then Troy Weaver and the Detroit front office did a complete 180 pretty much from the day that the NBA draft happened and just so on through the ensuing season. They just made good move after good move. For starters, the Jeremy Grant signing turned out to be an absolute steal at $20 million a year, as he went on to average a career-high 22 points to go with 5 rebounds and a career-high 3 assists, which were just all huge jumps from his previous seasons, like I said, as a role player. The Pistons also hit on pretty much every rookie that they either drafted or got through a draft day trade. Even a lot of them, I don't think they were expected to be as good as they were in their first year. But even with their issues, it seems like a really promising young team. I was really excited for Killian Hayes' pre-draft process, and even now I still remain spearheading the bandwagon, as I remain very, very hopeful for what he can do in the future. Because even though if you look at his stats from his rookie year, they look pretty god-awful to be honest, but if you actually watch through some of the games and see the things that he was doing on individual plays, I still think that his future as an above-average NBA playmaker is still very, very much within reach. Not to mention, he was hurt for a lot of the season, only played in 26 games, and like every other rookie from this past year, had no offseason, no summer league, barely any practices to get acclimated to the NBA readiness and play styles. So with a healthy offseason and some time to gel with his teammates, I think Killian Hayes is still a very, very good name to watch for the sophomore year. And then there was Saddiq Bey, someone who was originally with the Clippers pick, then traded to the Detroit Pistons, which a lot of Clippers fans have been wishy-washy about since they ended up with Luke Kennard, and we all know what happened there, but that's besides the point. For the Pistons, Saddiq Bey was awesome as a 3-point shooter and defensive player, and I think he has true 3-and-D potential for the rest of his career. Bey shot 38% on 6.5 attempts from 3 per game in his rookie year, and I don't think it's crazy at all to say that he could easily be a 40% shooter on just the same or even more attempts per game in the coming years of his career. Plus, on a quick side note, do you guys remember when Saddiq Bey won Player of the Week early on in this season? Because I just remember being caught so off guard by that. But I went back and looked at the numbers. Led the Pistons to a 3-1 record. He averaged 18 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists in 26 minutes per game. But the crazy part is, listen to this, he shot 71% from the field and 70% from 3 during the 4-game stretch that earned him that Player of the Week game, which is just absurd. So that even by itself just furthers my point that being a 40% 3-point shooter is definitely in the realm of possibilities for Saddiq Bey going forward. And then Isaiah Stewart, or Beef Stew if you want to call him by the nice little nickname they got for him in Detroit, he did awesome in his backup center role behind the Plumlee brother, and he ended up averaging 8 and 7 with over a block per game in 21 minutes. He even finished the season attempting just a hair under 1 3 per game and hit a third of them. So definitely some good progress, some good potential, some good flashes in that aspect of his game. But I think what really impressed me and continued to get my attention for this Detroit Pistons team was that once the season started to get going and they slowly started to realize more and more that they actually had some young players who were good enough with a good enough potential to garner more minutes, is that the Pistons actually went out and made moves to get them more minutes. They shipped off 3 of the older players on the roster by waiving Blake Griffin, then they had traded Derrick Rose and DeLon Wright in their own respective deals, but ultimately, again, not only did that de-age the team a whole ton, but it opened up over 80 minutes in possible minutes per game for the rest of the young guys that I just mentioned, in addition to other young guys like Josh Jackson and midseason acquisition Hamidou Diallo. And as a result of this, the Pistons became one of the more fun younger teams to watch and just see them develop as they played every other night or every night, wonky NBA schedule this year, and they kept it close in a lot of games against some of the better teams in the league. I specifically remember them giving the Brooklyn Nets some good games, even though they were injured most of the time. But if you actually look back over their schedule from this past year, again, they gave a lot of good teams some good close games, which was just great experience for this young team. So because they were a fun young team, and then they ended up in the draft lottery tied for the best odds at the #1 pick, they end up getting the #1 overall pick, essentially confirming that it's just a matter of days until Cade Cunningham joins the roster. And I think by that point, they got a whole lot more people's attention. And I think by this point, if they don't have your attention, then they definitely should. Because I know that y'all have seen the graphic by now with Cade Cunningham, Jeremy Grant, Killian Hayes, Saddiq Bey, and Isaiah Stewart. They're definitely going to be, I assume they're going to be one of the NBA League Pass favorites to watch over this next season. And overall, I think Detroit fans completely deserve to be excited for this team. Although I will say at the same time, I think they and just other NBA fans who just love to see young talent prosper, I think they all need to maybe just take a little step back in terms of expectations. Because in the end, it still takes a lot of time for talent to grow and develop in the NBA. I wouldn't be surprised at all if this team doesn't see the playoffs or even the play-in game until at least the 2023 season. Cade Cunningham seems to be an amazing prospect and someone who could definitely be a generational type talent, but I just don't see him turning around a 20-win franchise in 1 year, especially when there isn't a whole lot of established talent on the rest of the team. Not to mention, Blake Griffin is still owed a little under $30 million for this next season, which essentially takes the Pistons out of any chance to sign anywhere close to a max contract free agent this offseason. But at the end of the day, that might be for the better, even if no help is going to come right away to this young core. It might pay off to be patient and wait a season, because I've already mentioned in previous videos, but that 2022 free agency is already looking pretty stacked as long as some of those top players actually opt out of their player options that they have. The potential for the class is really high as there are a lot of very, very good players in it, and I could definitely see a path where if Cade Cunningham drafts into the league, if he shows in year 1 that he is a legit talent and that he's for real, then the Pistons, they finish off paying the BG contract, get him off the books, and then they have the cap space to go out and sign one of those max free agents. Again, if Cade Cunningham's the real deal, Pistons have a whole lot of other potential in their young talent with Hayes, Stewart, Saddiq Bey, Josh Jackson, Diallo, that I'd be very interested to see if one of those big name free agents maybe takes a chance on Detroit and what they've been building over this past year or so. But who knows? That's still, a season and some months away from happening, so we'll have to wait and see, and that's the fun part about the NBA. Is we just get to wait and keep on waiting some more until some fun stuff happens. But when the fun stuff happens, then we can have a good time.